Hello, Miss Ann.
Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm gonna eat my lunch while you do your broker chat today.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. How's it going?
Good. I can't believe family reunions here. I'm
I
like,
can't, I sort of had a little bit of a panic this morning,
mm-hmm.
telling like, oh, I leave in 3 days. Okay,
I know. Are you flying in on Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday? Okay.
Um, yeah, we're having an iFinder event.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, and so we're doing that on Saturday, and it just made me nervous to not have Friday in case
I
everything
hear
went
you.
south.
Yep.
Uh,
Well, with traveling nowadays, you kind of have to plan for the unexpected all the time.
that's it. It was just okay. We really we can't have it if it's not going to be good. So
Yes.
I have to be there. So yeah. When are you going? Friday?
Yes, we leave Friday morning.
Yeah, good, good. And where are y'all staying?
I think we're at the Hilton, Anaheim.
Oh yes. That's where we are too. You're
Yep.
gonna love it. Anaheim's one of my favorite places for family reunion because it's actually like a U. So
Okay.
you can walk easy to the convention center. And if for some reason you need to go see somebody that's in another hotel, usually they're just right in this little U-shaped
Oh,
area and
that's
it's
nice.
super easy. Yeah. It's
That's
just
awesome.
as a woman alone, I'm very aware that I don't want to
Yeah.
just be out, you know, strolling down the street. So this is
Yep.
nice. You stay in and it during convention it's all KW people. So you feel like, okay, I'm okay.
Yep. I hear you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. I am going to share my screen and we are going to get started. We are going to talk about assumable mortgages and I've updated everything. Some of it is stuff you may have seen or heard before. Doesn't matter. We're going to hear it again because this is one of the most um, unsung or least talked about strategies that I think could help you get to the closing table for both sellers and buyers. So we're going to talk about it again in the hopes that it helps you generate engagement with your clients, right? One of the things that has struck me lately is that we as real estate agents a little bit live in the gap between satisfied and engaged. So our clients end a transaction with us and they're satisfied. They think we did a good job. Yay, I'm happy to give you a review. But then what do? They turn around and sell with whoever sends them a postcard in the mailbox. And so, how do we bridge that gap between satisfied and engaged? And so, I want you to think about this conversation about as a way that you can prove your expertise and your value and maybe answer questions for people, which is engagement, right? We want them engaged with us and not just waiting until they're ready to buy or sell to contact us. So that's why we're doing this topic. And I'm excited to talk you through so that you'll be ready to engage with your sphere and answer questions about it. Here we go. So, first off, just reminding you that yes, there are some very low interest rates out there available from just like a little more than a year ago. So, some of these people may have gotten in their home a while ago. Some of them just got in a little while ago, right? So, FHA, assumable, VA assumable. I don't believe there is any USDA assumable. We're going to talk about that. But uh, there's thousands of these loans, literally thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions in our four county DFW, area. So let's pay attention and remember this should be a part of every listing presentation. It would make an awesome like bomb video to send out to your sphere about, hey, do any of you have an FHA or VA loan? Because it's assumable. Let's talk about how that could help you sell at a top price if you want to. See if you get any questions. Remember, engagement. All right, and just showing you that there are multiple listings out there right now that you'll see on the I searched by loan type on the left and assumable qualifying is what all of them are. I personally do not know of any assumable non-qualifying anymore. That went away back in the 80s. So I know it used to be a thing. I've heard that a few times. No, went away back in the 80s. So FHA, VA, USDA are assumable qualifying. Okay. And that's how you search. It's very easy to search that way. So it's also how you would input it. If you're doing a listing and that's one of their assets, one of their sales features, make sure you put it right here in loan type. Okay. And then which mortgage loan types are assumable? So FHA, VA, and USDA are assumable. So conventional loans are not assumable. Do you see that across the bottom? Conventional loans are not assumable. FHA loans, they just have to qualify to assume the loan based on current qualifications. So there's no extra level of you have to have a higher credit score, or none of that's true. If you would qualify for a new FHA loan, you qualify to assume one. USDA loans, of course, are geographically restricted and income restricted. So geographically means that maybe even a decade ago, I'm sorry, I don't really know for sure, but we had some Little Elm we had some USDA areas that they were trying to generate economic development in. Well, we don't have any more of those. We got plenty of economic development. So to my knowledge, there would not be assumable USDA loans right here in our Metroplex. Now, of course, when you expand your geography, there might be. So always good to check. And then VA loans are a little more restrictive. It is not true that you must be a veteran to assume them. That's not correct. However, you would use the seller's certification unless you are a veteran and have your own certification. So the one that we're really going to talk about and worry about is FHA, because that's going to be the primary loan assumption tool. And just all FHA insured mortgages are assumable. The lender, who is the holder or servicer of the mortgage, right, determines the credit worthiness of the assumptor in accordance with standard mortgage credit analysis requirements. So everything the same, but current lender will decide and has to be informed. Secondary financing, so a second mortgage or other borrowed funds, may be used by the assuming borrowers to help with the down payment. So sometimes the payoff is you have to have a big down payment in order to assume that FHA loan, and a second mortgage is fine. FHA allows that. And then this is just a lovely little sheet from Quicken Loans about who can assume a VA loan and what do they have to do. Very clearly spelled out, so it's possible. And certainly we have veterans in our area, so they may have certification. New VA loans, right, are at market rate. So what VA does for you is not have a really cheap rate. What VA does for you is you don't have to put down much down payment, and they make sure that the home is in good condition. So VA loans are still at a higher rate than what you might could assume. So this is great for veterans, really great. And then just talking about the advantages and the disadvantages, right? The advantages for a seller are an easier sale, right? It can make the home sell faster. I don't know that easier is the word I would personally use, because they do have to do a few steps to connect their lender with their buyer, right? So we have to have a cooperative seller, a smart seller who's willing to just notify their lender and connect them to their buyer. So maybe that's not easier, but it certainly can drive up a higher price. I absolutely believe we're seeing that. I've spoken to quite a few agents with closed sales on both sides, And it is a win for everybody. It is a real win for a seller. They are able to sell at a slightly higher price, kind of regardless of condition, because buyers want those rates, right? Changes a buyer's financial picture. And then that's the advantages for buyers, lower interest rate and lower closing costs. Now, be watching our lovely government. Right now, the charge is about $900 to process. And they say that's not enough. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's just horrible. So that law may change. They're lobbying hard to get the amount of the fee increased. But right now, it's super cheap. You still have to pay for, a survey and an appraisal and some of those things, but the actual just fee to the lender is very low right now. And disadvantages, it's just particularly on a VA loan, if a non-vet assumes it, then you are leaving your certification behind and you may not have enough of your own certification to go buy something else. So that's a VA. The disadvantages for buyers might be a large down payment. That's true. Not necessarily true if they just bought it a year ago. If they bought it in November, December 2021, they have a super low rate and not so much equity. But you can get a second mortgage and see if the first mortgage plus the second mortgage is still lower than taking out a new primary mortgage at the rates we have today. It's very possible that even putting two mortgages together is cheaper than one at higher rates. And then, yes, you have to qualify and you may inherit PMI payments. So you have to do some research. And then making sure because one of the things, and I keep hearing it just out, at Super Bowl parties and things, people saying, well, I would never let someone assume my loan because I don't want to be responsible if they don't pay. Well, that's not a thing. That is not what's happening. This is a novation. The lender formally assigns all rights and responsibilities of the original mortgage to this new buyer. The current seller has no more obligation at all. So when they tell you that, they just don't know. And that's why they need you, right? They need you. They need to engage with you and ask you a few questions because they're out there at Super Bowl parties saying things like, oh, I would never do that because I don't want what if the buyer doesn't pay? And it's a joy to be able to turn around and go, oh my gosh, it's not a thing. That's not even possible. It's not? I always heard that. No, not a thing. Can't happen. Be happy to send you some info, right? And I'm not even trying to sell these people because I don't sell anymore. But the opportunities, if you'll just talk about things, are really there for you to be of genuine value to people. So I wanted to remind you of some awesome forms. Of course, I'm the broker, so I love forms occasionally because they just allow us to not make errors, right? They help us do it the right way. And this is a great request for mortgage information that the seller can complete at the listing. So this is what you do at the listing. You send this to the lender so that you and the seller can receive the information about how to assume their loan. Okay, so this is just a part of a listing package now. You should not go on any listing appointments without this piece of paper and a discussion about assuming their loan. And then if you just don't want to use that form for some reason, this is because I know us, right? We like to do things our own way. And Lord knows sellers like to as well. So your seller can write a little letter to their lender if they want to and say, I expect the buyer of the property will want to occupy and assume my loan. And this is just a sample of what your seller could say. I personally don't see any reason why we wouldn't use this form, but if there is a reason, here's a sample of the letter. And then just to show you how popular this is getting, right? This is Bank of America's website. And they have on their website about mortgages, about assuming one of the qualified assumption, so an FHA, VA, USDA, how to go about that if they are the servicer. So I love it. All right, so let's just talk about how to do it contractually. Let's assume we did all the right things when we listed this property and everybody is ready to go and ready to assume the loan. So it is very possible that we will have both addendums, both the third-party finance addendum and the loan assumption addendum. So there is a form, a contract document to include as a part of your contract if this is what you're going to do. So it makes it nice and easy. So you need third-party financing addendum if there's going to be a second mortgage loan. And sometimes the second mortgage loan may not be a conventional second mortgage, so you might not check 1A2, go all the way down to 1G, and that might be where your second mortgage is going. If their parents are loaning it to them, or they're getting it a grant, somehow, any kind of financing that has to happen in order for them to assume the loan, you would put here on third-party finance addendum. And then this is the loan assumption addenda. And we're going to go through each paragraph here quickly, but just to make sure you understand, if you slow down and read this, this is super easy. Couldn't be easier. So let's take a look. So the first two paragraphs say credit documentation. So the buyer is going to deliver to the seller whatever of this the seller wants. The credit report, something about their employment or salary, a bank statement, a current financial statement. That way the seller knows, because the seller, remember, the seller's already been in touch with their lender. So they basically know what buyer can qualify to assume their mortgage and what buyer cannot. So they don't want to take their home off the market if your buyer has no chance of qualifying, right? So yes, they are going to ask for this information delivered to the seller. Now, in my opinion, during all this talk at a listing appointment about, okay, great, we're going to assume, I would go ahead and tell the seller that they're going to get some personal financial information about a buyer, and that they are going to need to be sure they have a shredder ready, right? Because they're going to shred and be super careful with any buyer information they receive. But this, sometimes I've heard of buyers balking at sending it to the seller. I don't understand that. It's perfectly logical to me. The seller knows already some about what their lender will approve or not approve. So the buyer is going to end up sending it to the seller first and then to the lender once the contract is executed. Realize buyer's credit approval, the seller can say that the buyer's credit is unacceptable. I'm sorry. It's just a right of the seller. And then, of course, the bank has the right to say. So, all right. And then this next paragraph has all the information about the specifics of the loan. So again, the seller has to have done a little bit of research, right? They have to have gotten the information back. So I'm going to go back. Y'all pay attention, stay with me, right? We want the mortgage information sent in advance as much as possible, because we are going to end up here on this addendum and we need to know what to write there. Okay, so it's not just an action, it's an action that leads to a closing. So we want to be sure that we have the information when we're ready to go under contract. And then loan assumption terms, payment of an assumption fee in excess of blank would allow the buyer to terminate, right? The seller's not obligated to pay. They could pay, but it allows the buyer to terminate. An increase in rate. There should be no increase in rate. That's not legal on FHA. They can't do it. But good protection for the buyer, that they know they're not getting, it socked to them, whatever word you want to say. So And we know the note holder must consent because it needs to be a brand new loan in this new buyer's name. And then this is the end, and it's giving all kinds of information, just taxes and insurance escrow, what's going to happen to that. Buyer and seller buyer shall reimburse seller for the amount in any transferred escrow accounts. Well, that makes all the sense in the world, so that taxes and insurance are paid on time.
And I have a quick question.
Okay, great.
So, obviously with the new appraisal that takes place, I'm assuming that the appraisal is going to come in higher than the previously appraised loan. Can the buyer utilize the equity within that new appraisal to go towards the down payment of the assumption?
So,
You know what I'm asking?
Yes. So
Okay.
the sales price, yes, usually let's assume that the appraisal comes in at sales price, which is probably just what's going to happen because appraisals are funny that way, how they happen to come in at sales price. Yes, I mean, it'll work just the same as it does normally. Yes. And the question I get a lot, Sarah, also is about PMI. Well, if suddenly, it is below the PMI threshold, and the answer is yes, most mortgage holders are dropping PMI if they end up with 20% down by virtue of the sales price and the appraisal.
Awesome. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's any real rules about that yet, but that seems to be what's happening. I've spoken to quite a few agents who've gone through this, and that seems to be what's happening. And that's my last slide. So obviously this requires great cooperation, right? We cannot do this if the buyer's agent and the seller's agents are adversarial. We cannot do this if the seller doesn't really trust their listing agent. I mean, every step of the way, this requires a high level of professionalism and cooperation. But that's who we are, right? I love it. And sometimes being of the best service to our clients is not about running around and opening doors for them. It's about being able to cooperate and ask the right questions and know the right forms at the highest possible level. So I think this loan assumption is obviously I'm talking about it because I just had the, experience of, well, I would never do that. Okay. So I'm talking about it out in the world because I think it prompts interesting conversation with people. And so you should be talking about it. Do y'all have an FHA loan? Is that what we did when you bought your home? Gosh, did you know that's assumable? That is such an asset. Wow. That was a great decision.
What's interesting, Anne, too, is just kind of thinking through this. I don't think anybody really probably keeps track of the homes that they've helped their buyers buy and what type of loan they used. But this could be like, if you started to keep track of that, you could circle back with a lot of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think as you're meeting people, I mean, particularly parents, like I know my own life when I was raising my children, right? Every baseball season, I met some new people and off they went into my sphere. And so all of those, I mean, they don't know you're a realtor. They don't know. And so just beginning to have those conversations on the sidelines of the baseball game and say, yeah, I've been learning a lot about assumable loans because people will ask you, how's real estate? How's the market? Oh gosh, interest rates are high. What do you think's going to happen with interest rates? I would jump straight to, what's cool? Do you have an FHA mortgage? Because those are all assumable. What? I don't even know what. I mean, a lot of people will say, I don't even know what kind of mortgage it is. And you say, okay, can I call you in 2 days and let's find out? Because it's a cool asset. I mean, just be yourself, whatever's natural for you. But also, how's the market? Oh God, those interest rates are just doing this or that. I like bringing more info and more more expertise into the conversation when I can. Do y'all have any questions? Does it help you? Nod, yes or no.
And I have another question.
Okay, go Sarah.
You're gonna see this was me as an agent. I asked a million questions.
Great, I love it.
Okay, so you have the TXR form that's requesting the information for mortgagee, but if you're representing the seller and they obviously have an FHA assumable loan, the only main things that you have to get during the list, like you said, the listing presentation, you have that TXR form. And then once you get that information, obviously you're uploading in special remarks that, or you're clicking that it's an FHA assumable loan. Is there anything else? I always kind of go through like a checklist, like if this is an option, like if this is something, what's on that checklist that we should all be aware of?
So I think I like personally uploading the seller's disclosure with whatever else I need to. Like if there was a foundation repair, I like putting it all there. Probably would put some basic info about the assumable mortgage right there, so that when they're looking through documents, they get a little bit of that just basic info, so we know what we're dealing with. Our payment is this. Our balance is this. Our interest rate is this. Think that would be very helpful to a buyer who then is going to figure out a down payment. And maybe they're fine. Maybe they have to get it out of their 401k. But they can begin to judge if they have that info right up front. Awesome. All right. Anything else y'all can think of? And just help me. There's never very many people on these recordings, and I want you to tell people to watch and to discuss it, because it could help you get business. I absolutely believe it. That gap between satisfaction and engagement is real in our business. So, upping isn't the right word, but changing your conversation so that you're bringing value all the time will help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ann.
Okay. All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. Uh-huh.